Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
As most of you have heard, the Nord Stream pipeline has been sabotaged. The Nord Stream pipeline is an undersea pipeline stretching 745 miles under the Baltic Sea from the Russian coast to northeastern Germany. It is the primary source of natural gas for Germany, and according to Al Jazeera, Russia supplied 40% of the EU's natural gas. So all the EU, and especially Germany, need the resources of Russia in order to stay warm during the winter. Now, the official reports from the United States mainstream media is completely absurd, as illustrated in this clown meme that says, so we're supposed to believe that Russia invested billions into Nord Stream 1 and 2, then sailed undetected all the way to Poland, exactly where the U.S. Navy was testing underwater drones days prior, and blew up their own pipeline. A pipeline that Russia would simply be able to turn off by the flip of a switch. Russia spokespeople say that this was not done by them, it was done by Anglo-Saxons. I mean, NATO has so much to gain by sabotaging this pipeline, and Russia has nothing to gain by sabotaging a huge source of their income while they're at war. Now, before all this happened, Germany was telling its populace that they were going to have sanctions over the winter over the amount of heat they could use, which was, of course, extremely unpopular. But now NATO can say, like, oh, you have no choice. It's not our fault we're making you do sanctions. It's Russia. You know, they're the ones who sabotaged the pipeline. Plus, the Nord Stream pipeline was Russia's #1 bargaining chip in the war. Russia was saying, all right, guys, don't join NATO, don't supply Ukraine, or else we're going to cut off your gas. It was the #1 thing Russia had over its opponent's head, besides, of course, the nuclear option, which no one wants to do. And for those of you paying really close attention, it really seems like there are people in the Biden administration and in NATO who are hell-bent on escalating this conflict. A conflict that would have been over in a week if it wasn't for all the weapons, soldiers, and cash being supplied to Ukraine from NATO. Putin has been trying to strike peace deals that are actually pretty reasonable with Ukraine, but to no avail because of NATO influence. All Putin wanted was for Ukraine to be an independent, neutral country and not join NATO, and for Donbass region to be autonomous. We could have ended this war and all the death and prevented World War III, but the Biden administration rejected the deal because they don't want peace. I thought this tweet was good. It says, the media lied to you every day for 2 straight years about C. Why would you believe anything they're telling you about Russia and Ukraine? The fact is, Putin has offered a reasonable peace proposal, and the U.S. demands that Ukraine reject negotiations and continue fighting. Meanwhile, Trump is tweeting, if I was in office, I'd be striking peace deals, I'd be meeting with Putin, the war would be over. And I'm inclined to believe him because it would take just a rational adult to come into the room and be like, hey, we don't need all this bloodshed. Let's put an end to this now. Biden has made no attempt to achieve this extremely obtainable goal and is just poking the bear and throwing gas on the fire. And for those who say, well, Ukraine has a right to fight for their sovereignty, they don't understand Ukrainian geopolitics. The Donbass region identifies as Russian. Watch the interviews with the people in Donbass where they talk about how for years, Ukrainian government has been slaughtering them, treating them like second-class citizens, and they've been waiting for Putin to liberate them in the Donbass region, which is eastern Ukraine. In Putin's peace proposal, he isn't even asking for western Ukraine, which is mostly Ukrainian. He's just asking for the elements of Ukraine who self-identify and are Russian to rejoin Russia, which is what those people in the Donbass region want. At least a large percentage of them. Of course, I can't speak for everyone. So a historic moment happened on September 30th. Ukrainians President Zelensky signs the NATO application. Of course, I don't think NATO is making a mistake by letting them join. I think it's all part of their plan. I don't think they're that stupid. There's no way they're that dumb. They want this war. Russia doesn't want the war. NATO wants it. Because NATO wants to wipe them off the map. And what many American citizens don't understand is that they view the world in an extremely narrow lens fed to them by the mainstream media. And there is an entire world of people that exists outside that narrow lens who doesn't have the same opinion as the average American. They don't view the West as the good guys. They view them as colonizers. They toppled Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, all countries that pose no threat to them. And as the world has watched the West topple governments, do illegal regime changes backed by the CIA, like in Iran, for example, during the Iran-Contra, everyone in the world is just watching the West be the bullies on the grand stage, taking resources, killing people, millions of civilians dead from the bombs of the United States. And then finally Putin stands up and goes, "Pachow!" and just bitch slaps NATO. And people go, yeah! Someone's standing up to the bully on the world stage. And the average American doesn't want to look at things this way because it's painful. It's painful in a world where we're brought up by Marvel and Star Wars, where we like to think that we're the good guys, the rebellion. No, the West is the empire. After the Cold War, the United States and Russia signed the Minsk Agreements, which meant that missiles could not be stationed in Ukraine. Acts of aggression could not exist in Ukraine. NATO threw that out the window for years and kept placing missiles there and soldiers there. And Putin kept saying, hey guys, stop doing this. You're breaking the Minsk agreement. If you don't stop this, I'm going to have to take action because you're breaking our deal. And Putin's like, I have every right to take action because of this deal being broken that you are no longer honoring. NATO would just ignore him and ignore him. And what's so funny is Joe Biden and Henry Kissinger both said decades ago that we will be in a war with Russia if we do not de-escalate in Ukraine. And Ukraine, again, is translated to neutral territory in their language. But NATO's been operating like the Cold War is still going. NATO was never supposed to grow after the end of the Cold War. It was supposed to complete its purpose and just keep the alliance together, not to expand. And if there's one message I want to really drive home to an American citizen who is possibly new to this information, is that Russia is not the enemy. Our enemy is domestic. And it's the global cabal, which sounds cringe, but it's the World Economic Forum, where Klaus Schwab has said on camera that they've penetrated the cabinets of every major European parliament. They're the ones facilitating the Great Reset. And I believe that people don't think that this is a threat because they're like, well, what's wrong with globalism? We're entering the 21st century. That's going to be inevitable. And the thing is, they're right. There is nothing on the surface wrong with globalism. Of course not. It's just a neutral system like capitalism or socialism. It's not inherently evil. The issue is that the people facilitating this Great Reset are nefarious individuals. And if we can all wake up and see the elephant in the room, we can stop this. Now, I'm under no illusion that Putin is the good guy. But this war was so unbelievably avoidable. All NATO had to do was just honor the agreements after the Cold War. But that's not what they want. There is a globalist cabal that wants a great reset. They want to have a tighter control over the populace. And Russia stands in the way of that. Russia is an anti-hero. Russia is not a hero. Russia is simply the enemy of my enemy. But if Russia had full control, I'd be fighting against Russia. But at least Russia isn't under the satanic influence that the West is under. In Putin's recent speech, he said he doesn't want to be a part of a society that normalizes sex changes for children. And I don't either. People need to wake up to the fact that we are under a really weird social experiment in the West. It's akin to the ancient rulers who would have eunuchs. You know what eunuchs are? They're soldiers where their balls would be chopped off. So that way, the controllers could leave their women guarded by soldiers, but they wouldn't have to worry about their women cheating on them and having sex with the soldiers. And that's what the power structure in the West wants from the men in today's society. They want us neutered. They want us to be good little eunuchs, feminine and weak. Just look at our social programming. Look at the Tavistokian Institute Netflix run by the fucking Bernays family. Look at our culture. Then by contrast, look at this recent concert that they had in Russia. The concert where Putin made his speech. Do you see any difference here between the Russian culture and the culture of the United States? Look at how pure and classy like the Russian people are. There's no half-naked women gyrating on stage, trannies in Baphomet outfits coming out, satanic imagery everywhere like we have in our Western media. Do you think our system would be capable of throwing a classy event like this? Hell no. They'd have half-naked Lizzo out there, devil horns, upside-down crosses. Like, that stuff isn't cool anymore because it's literally propped up by our media, by our establishment. And look at this crowd turnout and the cheering for Putin. Do you think Biden could pull a crowd like that? Of course not. Nobody likes Biden. They just viewed Biden as a lesser of two evils, the people who voted for him. For the American who's Russia-phobic, just stop your blind hatred for 1 second. Put yourself in the shoes of an average Russian right now, who literally believes that they're fighting against the satanic powers of a globalist empire that poses an existential threat to their very existence. These are not evil people. The average Russian is a good, hardworking Christian. They are not our enemy. And don't forget, it's the same deal in the United States and in Europe, where the average person is good, hardworking, and moral. Like, for example, go back to the United States with Hurricane Ian, which is ravaging Florida and the Carolinas right now. There are countless competent, hardworking, smart, and dedicated people helping the victims of the hurricane right now. With America's endless resources and our ability to rebuild infrastructure, there's so much strength and there's so much goodness in the United States when you break it down to the grassroots level. And all we need in this country is good leadership to harness that energy. So I don't want to sound un-American with the things that I'm saying. We just need good leadership. But our leadership under the Democrats in the year of 2022 is truly evil. Make no mistake. I'm not saying Democrats are evil. No. Just the current Democratic leadership is, don't ever kid yourself. They are bona fide evil. And there's elements of the Republican Party that are evil as well. I'm looking at you, Liz Cheney. So it's not a left or a right thing. It's not a Republican Democrat thing. It is a woke cult versus people who are not in the woke cult. It's the globalist cyborgs like Macron, Justin Trudeau, Kamala Harris versus humanity. And some people make the argument that the United States has to crush its enemies in order for us to keep enjoying the perks of capitalism and working supply chains. And all I'm saying is that it doesn't need to come to that in the 21st century with the internet, with us being able to openly communicate with everyone across the world. NATO is the reason we are approaching World War III. It is not Russia's fault. And of course, I condemn the war. I hate that it's happening. And the powers that be wanted Russia to invade. And it's like Putin fell into a trap. Putin fell for their trap. And now it's come to the point where Russia has offered to talk and come up with a peace treaty, but Zelensky said, no, I will not meet with you. And not only will I not meet with you, but I'm going to join NATO. You know, some might argue like, oh, nothing would come of a peace talk. Well, okay, but at least have the talk. Have the conversation. And for NATO and Zelensky to not even have the conversation, it's on them. No matter how aggressive you feel Russia is, you need to acknowledge the fact that they're willing to come to the table and stop this war, but NATO is not. And for what? Some 30-year-old buffer zone that the elites use to launder their money? That doesn't negate the culture. That doesn't negate the people there or the beauty of their cities. But these artificial lines over this buffer territory were drawn up by black suit establishment types, and the country has been corrupt to the core from its inception. And meanwhile, while everyone's distracted by Ukraine, China's going to slide in and take Taiwan. And Taiwan is far more important to us than Ukraine is. But we live in clown world, so none of that matters. We the people are just going to be at the whim of these psychopathic leaders until we can wake enough of the people up to stop this nonsense. But they keep the people distracted by woke virtue signaling, woke media, woke arguments. And the woke people think they're the intellectuals, but really they're the fools. They're the ones with the wool over their eyes, who think they're making progress, but fail to realize race relations were a heck of a lot better back in the 90s. We are not making progress with race relations. It's getting worse on purpose. And it's not because people are just inherently racist. It's because our media and our politicians are pitting us against each other by using half-truths and giving us false stories that lack context and trigger us to act emotionally. All the while, they're poisoning us with processed foods, deadly to ineffective shots. Bill Gates is buying up all the available farmland in the U.S., and they're escalating World War III. So yeah, again, our enemy is not Russia. It's the technocrats that spend every waking moment trying to figure out new ways to get us addicted to social media. It's the coastal elites. It's the limousine liberals. It's the World Economic Forum. It's the rhino Republicans and the woke mental illness that's plaguing our country. So yeah, the best thing we can do is just make ourselves stronger people and spread awareness. And that's about it. I'll see you next time.